What's up, Epic 7? We've got a little bit of information about what's coming next, stove post as well as some mined information that I got some permission to talk about, so let's jump right into it. First things first, Wind Rider is coming back to the powder shop. So for all of you that have, I know all of you have a ton of powder saved up. I mean, we've only had a few limited banners, but hey, if you want your Wind Rider and you've got some powder, now's your time. But let's talk about the most recent stove post. New hero Immortal Wukong preview. Now, this has been the long-awaited unit for the China server. Now, initially we thought this was going to be a limited hero, but you notice this first sentence. We are excited to reveal a glimpse of the new Covenant hero, Immortal Wukong, coming to Orbis. The phrasing, the terminology Covenant hero lends us to believe it is not a limited unit. They seem to call limited units limited banners and non-limited units Covenant banners. Now, here's the thing. When the initial Chinese post was put out there about Wukong, the direct translation of Chinese to English, which is always a little sus, said a limited national server hero. So limited hero for the China server. But the way the wording is phrased, Chinese is a very tricky language to translate because so much is lost in the inflection and intonation of the words. It could also have been interpreted to say a custom China server hero, a unit custom made for the national server, for the China server. And in fact, the same verbiage was used for Knockwall. A lot of us thought Knockwall was going to be limited because the same verbiage was used there. So we think the actual proper translation was a custom hero, not a limited hero. So it looks like Wukong isn't going to be limited. At least that's what the evidence shows so far. So Wukong is an automatic doll made using new material developed in Policia. Impervious to any damage, the new Covenant hero, Immortal Wukong, can only be destroyed through Jingoa program. So here he is. This is what our boy looks like, right? The color, the jade green color, swirls in the eyes and stuff, screams he's going to be an Earth unit. And in fact, I think we got confirmation that's what he indeed is. Initially tasked with guarding the core tower of Policia, Immortal Wukong was excluded from operations and sealed away due to his inherent arrogance and uncontrollable free-spirited nature. However, when a crisis struck Policia and they needed someone to carry out a top-secret mission, Immortal Wukong was chosen as the only suitable candidate and given a new mission. Although there is a risk that the Jingoa program could automatically activate and cost him his life upon failure, Immortal Wukong intends to accomplish the mission and reclaim his position as the dominant force, shedding his label of uncontrolled troublemaker. More animation, but it looks like his story is definitely going to involve Landy, Politis, and Flan as well. So an automatic doll, he is one of the androids, one of the synths, one of the robots, so to speak, from Policia. Here's his sprite art. Looks really good. I mean, what a Chad. What a good looking unit. I'm kind of looking forward to that. Immortal Wukong effortlessly wields, we'll slaughter this, Rui Jingu Bong, a tool used for measuring the depth of rivers, seas, and a weapon against his foes. As a 5-star Earth Scorpio Warrior. So he's going to have the same stats as a Rem or a Runka. He flaunts his high attack and high health, overpowering enemies by further enhancing his attack with imprint concentration. So he's got attacks to self-imprint. So let's talk about his skills. Okay, skill 1, swing. Attacks the enemy with Rui Bong and grants barrier to the caster for 1 turn. Barrier's strength increases proportional to attack, and when it's used on the caster's turn, it attacks all enemies. The changed attack does not trigger a dual attack. Okay, so the changed attack, what they're talking about here is when he attacks all enemies, it doesn't trigger a dual attack. I don't quite understand why they needed to point out that that's the changed attack, and his S1's not going to trigger dual attacks, so there you go. So he spams barriers on his S1, and he AoEs on his turn. It doesn't sound that impressive, but let's move on. The Immortal one, his S2 passive, increases crit hit resistance and penetration resistance by 35%. So he's got 35% built-in crit and pen resistance. So this is built into his kit. This is not a buff. So if you run him with a person who gives anti-crit as a buff, that'll stack. So if you run him with Landy, that'll be 85% anti-crit. When the caster suffers a non-critical hit, it increases attack and speed by 20% and can stack up to 3 times. Wow, that's strong. So somewhat of a Landy passive built in, where the more crits that don't land, the more normal hits that land on him, the faster and harder hitting is going to go. And a 60% boost to attack and a 60% boost to speed is gigantic. So that's going to make him strong down the road. And I'm assuming this is a pre-Molagora number. That 35%, it'll probably be 50% after you Mola the skill, which would give him 100% anti-crit when you run him with anti-crit buffs units, like DN, like Landy, like, oh, who else we got? Shu, you've got Mort. You could even put him on Shu's artifact and get anti-crit that way as well, and make it even higher. Because you definitely don't want him to be crit. You definitely want to stack that crit up as much as possible so you can get these speed and attack boosts. Skill 3, Heavenly Fighter Strike. Increases the attack of the caster for 2 turns, so he self-attack buffs before attacking the enemy, and he stuns for 1 turn. Okay, so he's a 1-turn stun, and he self-attack buffs before he hits. When the caster's attack is greater than the target's attack, damage dealt increases proportional to the difference up to a maximum of 70%. That's going to hit really heckin' hard. If he self-attack buffs and you build him with a lot of attack, and his barrier scales with his attack, so you definitely want to like put a lot of attack on this unit, this skill will hit very, very hard. When it's awakened, same. Okay, so when it's awakened, it ignores element, which means, okay, look, it's clear what they're trying to do here. They're trying to make this guy a counter to Janua, right? In PvE, Janua is going to seek him out because he's green, and they're having him ignore elemental disadvantage so he can S3, hit Janua like a truck, and stun Janua for 1 turn, so you can drop his health down and get a stun on him. But you'll have to run him with some additional source of anti-crit, or Janua is just going to kill him. And to be honest with you, I think even without a crit, an S1 into his passive S2, okay, if you resist the crit and you proc the resistance, probably a 50% chance to proc the resistance, or to proc the pen resistance. I think if you proc both, Janua won't kill him, but I think a good Janua will just shoot right through and kill without a crit, because Janua is just that giga strong. So yeah, I don't know. It might work. Well, just take some testing. You're going to have to build him with some beef. You can't just go all attack on this guy and hope that the barriers save you. You're going to have to put some ass on this unit to be able to make him a Janua counter. I'm a little skeptical. It is so hard to come up with a Janua counter that doesn't break the game, right? But, yeah. So the embodiment of destruction that makes the impossible possible. Meet the Immortal Wukong. Immortal Wukong, who doesn't have immortality on any of his skills. Immortal Wukong, who might just die to a single hit from Janua. We'll have to see. Now, for those of you who are curious, this is what his S1 skill looks like. Now, this is mined, so this might change. I want to talk about data mines now. Usually this has been taboo, but I talked directly to Smilegate about this and kind of got the nod to go ahead and discuss the data mines, because here's the thing. Data mines are always going to be a problem. I said, why don't you guys just post it? Why don't you guys just put something out on Stove? Even if it's just a screenshot saying, coming soon. Why don't you guys let us know before the data miners know? It's embarrassing that we have to hear about this on Reddit and not from Smilegate. And I was surprised with the response. It was a very relevant response. They said, hey, look, we lock it down so that you can't data mine this stuff, and then people scream and cry because Fribbles gets broken, and then they send trucks and review bomb. So we have to put the stuff in the game, because this kind of stuff, they have to upload the assets to the game and submit it to the Google Play Store and iTunes to the Apple Store to get them to review it and approve it. Because if they don't do it, if they just push the updates, if there is something in there that runs contrary, maybe they miss something that gets misinterpreted as copyrightable, maybe they put something in that gets interpreted by the algorithm as not being appropriate for a 13+ game. If they do something that would be a problem, the stores will pull the game from the stores until they submit a corrected copy, and that can take 2 to 3 days for an emergency submission to get a corrected copy through. So not only is there rush and frenzy to try to fix the problem, then they have to resubmit it, and in the meantime they're not in the stores and they don't make money. So they have to put it in the game to get approval in advance, so that once it's approved, then they can hit the go live button and not have to worry about any problems with marketing their game. So try to understand that data mines are always going to be there, always going to be a problem, but they said we can go ahead and talk about them as long as we preface it with, this is a data mine. This is unofficial content. Now sure, you'll say, but it's in the game, it's unofficial. The assets are in the game, but it's not been launched in the game, therefore it's unofficial. And by that I mean anything can change. These skills could change, these percentages could change, his damage modifiers could change, the animation and art on a unit could change. And I don't want to present this as, this is the way it's going to be, this is definitely the way his unit's going to look, this is definitely the way it's going to look. Because if Apple comes back and says, hey, this isn't appropriate, you need to change it to be conform with these regulations, then it's going to get changed before it goes live. So whenever we preface something with, we're talking about leaks, we're talking about data mines, we're talking about unofficial information, please keep that in mind, that don't take it to the bank. And don't get upset when it's different on release, because there was probably a damn good reason it was different on release, from it being rejected by the stores to them doing some testing and deciding it wasn't good enough to feedback from the community. There's all kinds of reasons they can change it. Until it is pushed live into the game, it's unofficial and not to be trusted. This is Wukong's S3, speaking of not to be trusted. Look how beautiful this skill is. This unit looks so cool. It looks so cool. And that's what's a little bit concerning, is some people think, although it looks like he is built to deal with Genua, and his S2 and S3 are definitely angled towards dealing with Genua and maybe some other stuff. Does it go far enough? Will he be strong enough to make it into the modern RTA scene where it's just filled with monsters? The other possibility is he might be for the new rift that's coming. That's right, we have got a new rift coming our way. We're going to be fighting an octopus, guys. That is a kraken. This is an asset that's in the game, again, subject to change, but this looks like he's going to be the new rift boss. And with Wukong coming out on the 20th, and being an earth unit, and Krakens are water units, right? I mean, it's not going to be a fire octopus, right? So there's a really good chance he could be specifically built to be good in Rift. You could likely say the same for Bernard. A lot of us are like, what's this trash 3-star unit that looks like a nerfed version of Rey doing? Well, let's look at his kit too. So here's the information we got on Bernard. Bernard gives you a barrier at the start of the battle, and every time Bernard's turn ends, he gives you a barrier. I think this is the big takeaway for why you're going to want Bernard and you're going to want him for Rift. You could probably get away with Rey, but the spamming of barriers is huge. Everything else on Bernard's kind of trash, but look at this. Kraken, Rift Season, Attribute Earth. This means you can only use Earth units in the upcoming Rift. I mean, named Nightmare of the Ocean, a legend about a giant octopus living in the sea of death has been circulating amongst sailors. While most dismiss it as just another tall tale, a handful of survivors have confirmed its existence. According to their testimonies, when it hunts, it surges from the depths of the ocean at incredible speeds, crushing everything on the surface, leaving nothing but wreckage. So, it looks like Rift Season 2 is right around the corner, and I suspect it'll probably be in the next patch, guys. Hopefully some of this changes, because I breezed through this and it looks miserable. But let's go over it real quick. Abyssal Tentacles, Undispellable. When attacking, increases damage dealt. Okay. When suffering an attack that does not target all allies, decrease damage suffered. This is garbage. So what this means is, you know how when you're doing the Blooming Snag Lich in Expedition, and you attack it with a non-AoE attack, it does a lot less damage, like almost insignificant damage. That one works with multi-target attacks, so we're able to get away with units like Bomb Model Kana and Bal and Sazan, Champion Zerado, Vildred, anybody attacks multiple, but this says attacks that does not attack all allies. This makes me think it has to be an AoE attack. So hopefully that changes. Hopefully we can do multi-target attacks and still do maximum damage, because single target attacks are not going to do much damage at all, and that's going to seriously limit our ability to fight this thing. Cannot trigger a dual attack. Son of a bitch. Well, it's back, guys. We cannot dual attack in Rift, so being able to cheese it with dual attack units is right out. That's going to make this even harder. This was a thing last Rift. It's becoming a more and more of a thing in Hall of Trials. I think they figured out that dual attacks kind of broke their game, so... Decreases the amount of Fighting Spirit acquired and evasion by 100%. So, Fighting Spirit units and evasion units, right out. Remains even after reviving. So that sucks. The Kraken skills. Buckle up, guys. These are horrible. Corrosive Horror. Attacks the enemy. If a critical hit, it will increase the cooldowns of the target to a maximum. So if he hits you and he crits, he resets your skills to their maximum. Tamarin goes all the way... I mean, you can't use Tam, she's red, but... You know, you get what I'm saying, right? If you have an 8-turn skill cooldown and you were going to get ready to use that skill next turn, if he slaps you with this, you're back to an 8-turn skill cooldown. It ignores ER. You can't dodge it. When attacking, he increases his crit by 35%. He has even more chance to crit. And it penetrates the target's defense by 50%. He attacks the first row unit first. So, long story short, this skill is going to attack the front row unit and hit it heckin' hard. In a perfect world, you want that unit to be able to not be crit, and you want that unit to be relatively resistant to pen. Where have I heard that before? Not be crit and resistant to pen. Feels familiar. Oh, look at that. We have crit resistance and pen resistance on Wukong. But this might reset Wukong's skills. But wait, Wukong's only skill that would be reset is a single target attack that stuns. When have we ever seen a boss that can be stunned? And it's single target. It's not going to do any damage. You're only going to want him to do his S1 skill, which attacks all enemies on his turn and gives a barrier. Yeah, guys, I'm sorry. Wukong's built for Rift. Let's look a little further. So you're probably going to want Wukong in the front so that he doesn't die from this, and if it resets him, so what? He's still doing his S1s, and he's going to be spamming barriers to help keep him alive. Abyssal Curse. Attacks all enemies, inflicting 2 venom effects, making them unable to be buffed for 4 turns. 4-turn buff block. This cannot trigger a counterattack, and you can't trigger counters. So using units like Green Armin, not going to be as effective, because Green Armin's AoE attacks are all from her counters, not from her single target, not from her S1 or her S3. I think you got to burn, and who's going to want to do this on manual? So, Venoms. We get to deal with injury. Everybody loves dealing with injury. It's so nice that injury's in PvE against us, but not for us, so that's fun. Abyssal Gaze. Attacks all enemies, inflicting injuries. We get Venoms and injuries. God, in 4-turn buff block, you're going to need a cleanser. Attacks all enemies, inflicting injuries, and decreases debuff duration of the caster by 1 turn. So he somewhat self-cleanses. Every time he uses this skill, he drops 1 off his debuffs. Cannot trigger a critical hit. The severity of the injuries increases proportional to the damage dealt. Well, duh, that's how injury works. Injuries decrease max health of the target by up to 50% every time the skill is used. What? He could potentially cut your health in half in 1 hit? Please change this Smilegate. Please, please don't make this be a thing. The 8 Horrors. I guess there's tentacles. At the start of the battle, after attacking on the caster's turn, grants 8 Abyssal Tentacles undispellable. A maximum of 8 Abyssal Tentacles can be granted. After suffering an attack that targets all allies, dispels 1 Abyssal Tentacle. They really, really want you to use AoE attacks in this, guys. If you don't use AoE attacks, you're punished. Without AoE attacks, you don't do good damage. Without AoE attacks, you're not going to dispel these tentacles. Every time an effect is dispelled, inflicts Sever for 2 turns. When using an attack that targets all enemies, if there are 3 or fewer enemies, damage dealt increases. Okay, so he hurts you more and more. So whatever Sever is, we're going to get that if we every time we dispel a tentacle. So again, you want AoE units, making Wukong pretty important for this. Sea of Death. At the start of the battle, inflicts Abyssal Dread on all enemies and takes the first turn. So no matter what, he's going to go first. He's going to hit everybody first, and he's going to give everybody Abyssal Dread. Whatever Abyssal Dread is, I'm not thrilled. Oh, it's Abyssal Dread. No dual attacks. No fighting spirit. No evasion. So, lovely. Oh, wait. At the start of the turn, grants 8 Abyssal Tentacles. After suffering attack that attacks all enemies, dispels 1 Abyssal Tentacle. Every time this effect is dispelled, inflicts Sever. So he'll have 8 of these Abyssal Tentacles, and the Abyssal Tentacles are what are causing the decreased damage on single target attacks. So once you need to do 8 AoE attacks to get rid of these, and then your single target attacks will start to be valued. Okay, that's not as bad as I initially thought. It's again like Blooming Snag Lich, where you need to do a certain number of AoE attacks, but in this case, instead of getting the anti-venom that you get in the Expedition, in this case you get the ability to actually do damage with single targets again. So at that point in time, once you dispel all these, Wukong's S3 might hit like a truck. Might do really good damage, even though it's not AoE. Where was I? At the start of battle, inflicts Abyssal Dread, so no fighting spirit, no evasion, no dual attacks. Every 5th attack suffered activates Harbinger of Horror. What the hell is that? Harbinger of Horror attacks all enemies, restricting for 2 turns, increasing buff duration, or increasing debuff duration of the caster by 1 turn. Deals additional damage proportional to the injuries on the target. Deals additional damage proportional to the injuries on the target. So he has got an AoE giant rat gun, like Shu. He's going to injure you. He's going to venom you. He's going to buff block you. Then he's going to start nuking you with a additional damage, a pop damage from proportional to your injuries. So, I really hope that this rides true Datamine form and changes. Remember, all of this is just what has been proposed. Things can change. Smogate doing testing, the community responding to it. All of these numbers and percents could change, but this gives us a pretty good eye into what's going to happen. You can see why Wukong's got a barrier on his S1. Barriers will really help reducing injury damage, reducing the damage from having these venoms popping. You can see why we really want Bernard on the team. Bernard has got, Ray style cleanses and stuff, but he starts the fight with a barrier to help out that initial attack, and every time he ends a turn, you get another 15% barrier, which will help with the pop damage from the venoms. So the team for this, I mean, probably Bernard and Wukong are going to be 2 staple units for this. And maybe Mort for anti-crit. Probably Landy, even though she's mostly single target. Her CR pushes and her AoE on the S3 will be nice. And eventually when you get rid of the Abyssal Tentacles, she'll start doing some really good damage. It's going to be tough to figure who the +1 is. You know who might be a really good +1 is Lucy. The 3-star unit that you get from the side story. Lucy has got a barrier on her S3. So yeah, I don't know. We might have to run double weaver, but we might run single weaver. Another thing that's not being mentioned here, guys, is the rift cores. Remember, as you advance in rift, you get selectable rift cores that change mechanics of the fight. So just because this looks horrific doesn't mean it will be. Maybe you get a rift core that makes you immune to injury. Maybe we get a rift core that reduces these percentages. Maybe you get a rift core that reduces the number of abyssal tentacles. There's all kinds of things that can happen to make this a little bit easier, so we really have to wait for the final post to pop out. I wouldn't go crazy building units. I wouldn't go chasing Lucy now because of what I just said. I would wait and see how the mechanics of this suss out, and we'll start building teams and theory crafting, and we'll find a way through it, guys. We always have. So, there you go. What are your thoughts on Wukong? What are your thoughts on him being damn near required for this? That's something I don't particularly like. Kane was really good in Rift, but you could do Rift without him. Based on what I'm reading here, I'm not sure you can do this Rift without Wukong. There are no other AoE S1 units that don't rely on other skills. I mean, Armin has an AoE, but it's only on counter, and you can't, a lot of his stuff doesn't trigger counter. You need reliable AoE units. Oh, Bellona. Bellona should be really good in this too. Bellona's got defense breaks. She's got a lot of AoEs in her kit. Her S1 damage isn't going to be that great, but yeah, I think Bellona, especially on Bloodstone, Bellona is going to be a really good unit for this, so hooray. I get a chance to use green Bellona more. I like that. I think it is scummy, though. I think if this guy is required to do Rift in any meaningful way, I don't like that. I don't like that they're presenting a problem, or it's not just presenting a problem and selling a solution, right? You can always just avoid the problem or find other answers to it. But if they are selling an event and making a unit required for that event, it really, really smacks of the Lethe event last year, where if you didn't pull Ocean Breeze Lulika, you couldn't do this event. It really smacks of if you don't pull Wukong, you're not going to be able to do Rift. And that distresses me, and I hope I'm wrong on that. I hope that Smilegate takes a second look at this, and that we can find ways to do this without Wukong, because after this triple banner, a lot of us are starved for resources, and a lot of people aren't going to be able to pull for Monkey Boy, especially knowing that we're probably going to get more limiteds here in the not too distant future. So put it in the comments section. Let me know what you think about Wukong. Kit-wise, I think he looks pretty mid. I think he might be a Guild Wars alternative to getting rid of Genua. I am not convinced you're going to be able to build him with the attack you need, and the speed you need, and the bulkiness you need to be able to take a Genua on the chin, and plus Genua will just not hit him. Genua will just kill other people, and sure, he can S3 and stun Genua, but you know what, so can half a dozen other units. I mean, why not just use Fat Cat? Why not use Solitaria? There's other ways to do it. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see how well he does outside of Rift, but inside Rift, he looks like he is going to be darn near required to fight this big bad. I hope this video is interesting to you. I'm looking forward to seeing the official release on this. If you have any questions, ask them in the comments section. And as always, like and subscribe. Have a great one, Epic 7.